Good afternoon and welcome to our next concurrent session of the day, 3 mini webinars, bestowing virtual awards, office hours outside the box, and DEIB at the instructor level. Our presenter today is Dr. Lynda Mae. Dr. Lynda Mae is a principal lecturer at Arizona State University with a PhD in social psychology with an emphasis on personality psychology. She also specializes in consulting publishers on the conceptualization of engaging, interactive learning activities that use gamification tools and techniques. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. And on that note, I will hand it over to our presenter, Dr. Lynda Mae.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that introduction, Daisy. And I am going to go ahead and bring up my screen right now. Here we come. All right, it is such a pleasure to be here again. I love this innovative educator series and attended as an attendee in addition to actually contributing to it. So just love it. So welcome to my series of 3 mini webinars. And each of these are designed to get your creative juices flowing and to prompt thinking outside the box. So they're going to go really fast. And all I want to do is throw a bunch of ideas at you and see if we can kind of get that process going. The first of my 3 in this series is titled Office Hours Outside the Box. Okay, have you ever scheduled office hours for students just to find yourself doing other work the entire time? The idea of visiting a professor can be intimidating for some students. I'd like to explore a number of ways to entice students to office hours, starting with more conventional ideas and working our way to more creative ones. Now, some ideas may jive with your personality, some may not, but hopefully this presentation will get everyone's creative juices flowing and will prompt everyone to think outside the box when it comes to office hours. So let's start with some more conventional ideas. Students are not always aware of the many functions of office hours. Many of them believe that they are just a venue for students to ask questions about the class material, and that to use them for any other reason would be a social faux pas. Some are surprised to find that they can come just to comment on the material and just to discuss the class material, or to get advice on study habits or tips on things that they can do now to be more competitive down the road when applying to grad schools and careers in the field. How about just getting to know their professor and vice versa? I like listing all of these, making them all clear on the very first day of class. How about choice of mode? One thing students loved during the pandemic was a chance to visit office hours without leaving home, over Zoom, of course. While some professors offered the option of remote office hours before the pandemic, many did not. Yes, in-person office hours are personable, but consider the time and effort required of some students who are coming from the other side of campus, walking all that way, locating your building on a map, trying to locate your office in the building. And if this is their first time, likely getting lost at least once, if not more, on the way. So you might want to consider offering both modes, in person or Zoom, to your students when it is safe to do so. In addition to offering both modes, I also post a campus map showing my building and a building interior map showing my office location for students, making it as quick and easy for them as possible. Navigating campus can be especially challenging to freshmen. Our campus is 664 acres, and it amazes me how many of our buildings only have a name posted on one side. Imagine navigating that for the first time in 108-degree heat. Okay. So little gestures like providing maps can also really send a message to students. You want them to come. You are sincerely hoping that they do so. How about a bribe? I'm not below a bribe. Student groups discovered long ago that one way to guarantee good turnout for their events is offering free pizza. Using a simple bribe can be an easy way of making your office hours more appealing. Now, if you're not able to fund feeding your entire class something like pizza, you can limit quantities. I have been known to message my entire class just as my office hours begin that a cinnamon roll is waiting for the first 6 students to attend. Even if nothing else, I usually have a bowl of bite-sized chocolates or individually wrapped cookies on my desk with a sign, please take one. This, by the way, can be a fun way, it can be a really fun thing to switch out with Smartie rolls during finals week and see if any of your students catch on, or actually prescribe them to them. Take 1 or 2 Smarties as needed each day of your finals. But think about this, at least the bribes like these will convince students you really do welcome them to your office hours. You really do want to spend time with them. And at the most, it could be the deciding factor for a student who was on the line considering coming. How about changing up the turf? I love this one. While office hours are usually held in our offices, on our turf, in other words, why not consider offering some on students' turf? I used to hold some of mine at a mid-campus coffee shop, which further sends a message to students that they can just stop by to chat. Since that coffee shop has become really crowded, I've switched to a student study location in our student union building. Going out to meet students on their turf, instead of always expecting them to come to yours, can show effort on your part too. Also, my favorite student study location to use actually has easy chairs and a fireplace, which can create a great fireside chat kind of aura. Why not move your office hours outside during great weather? This can be a great way to feature sites on your campus. On ours, for instance, I can specify a certain location on our famous palm walk, or at a specified table outside our new campus pavilion, or on the steps of our art museum. Many college towns have a really great out downtown area. Here at ASU, I will sometimes hold my office hours on the outdoor patio of a downtown Tempe coffee shop or restaurant, one that doesn't mind loungers. Now, I would never spring this on a restaurant. Instead, I talk to them, request this, and arrange this in advance. Oftentimes, restaurants don't mind loungers in the slower afternoon hours, if you ask, and arrange this with them in advance. Others are even eager to host us, realizing that this is free advertising, right? How about a dog park? Encouraging students to bring their dogs. Special bonds are formed between pet lovers, whether you have one or not. Pets just bring something out in people. And a chance to introduce your dog to your professor, Who could resist that? I've even had 2 students borrow a dog to come once, a few who came to show me their cat pictures, and one who actually brought Tinker, his turtle. Talk about an icebreaker. I've even had a student borrow a cat once to try to bring it, but not a good idea. Okay, let's move on from outdoors and or off campus. How about using face filters during Zoom office hours? A particularly zany idea practiced by a colleague of mine is using a silly face filter during Zoom office hours to lighten things up a bit. Now, clearly, this takes a particular personality to pull this off. I wouldn't do this, but he does it well. Most of us know about Zoom backgrounds, but not everyone is familiar with Zoom filters, found, by the way, in the same place under the video arrow. There are different choices there of silly things you can add to your face, such as a mustache. With a little more tech know-how, you can even become a talking potato head, other object, or an avatar with lip syncing and all. Again, it takes a certain personality to pull this one off. But if you are interested in learning ways to set up and use these type of camera face filters, just Google how to use camera face filters on Zoom. Oh, and there's a great tip on one of those websites. Don't forget to turn this face filter off before your next professional meeting. Okay, and I'd like to end this first of my mini-series with my favorite strategy of all, making your office hours an adventure, inviting interested students to experience something near campus with you. I've had students meet me on the steps of the Museum of Tempe History, as shown here, in the middle of our pedestrian bridge crossing Tempe Park Lake. These are all walking distance, okay? And my favorite location of all, on top of a small mountain, okay? So you can tell from this photo that this small mountain is located right on the edge of our campus. See our stadium here? You follow my cursor. And yes, I will have them meet me right up here way at the very top. Okay, very fun. Okay, so the goal of these mini webinars is to throw some ideas out here, get those creative juices flowing. Can you think of other ways to make your office hours more appealing? Has this session inspired you to think outside the box about your office hours? This concludes this mini webinar, but please jot down your comments and ideas in the Q&A, and we'll address these at the end of this mini series. Our second mini webinar is titled Bestowing Virtual Awards. Now, generally, we focus our energy identifying and trying to further motivate students who are having difficulty in our class. An example would be academic status reports, right? And this should be our focus, right? Struggling students need help, and we need to increase retention. But oftentimes, our very best students get overlooked as far as special feedback, especially in large classes. With this mini webinar today, I will focus on a quick, easy, and powerful way to reward exceptional performance, one that illustrates gamification and numerous other psychological phenomena. Whoever said, our classwork is so amazing that my roommates have to bribe me to pull me away from it? Whoever said, I get so engaged in our classwork that I put off eating, sleeping, even relieving myself sometimes? No one. Yet this is precisely what many of our students are saying about gaming. Gamification in education is the art of identifying fun and additive elements found in games and applying them to education, to the experience of learning. You tell me, which is more fun, gambling on a slot machine for 8 hours and winning $100, or working in a factory pulling a lever for the same 8 hours and earning a $100 paycheck? Now, clearly it is gambling, right? Even though both had the very same outcome. Research has shown that rewards trigger the release of dopamine in winners' brains. And dopamine produces an additive feeling of pleasure and urge to seek out that experience again. Dopamine is a powerful reinforcer. When you see texts awaiting you on your phone, dopamine is released, which causes you to check for texts more often. Now, your hypothetical $100 casino win was likely won in $1, $2, $5, and $10 increments, and each one was accompanied by a dose of dopamine. These intermittent surprise rewards of excitement and pleasure are clearly missing from the factory environment. They are precisely what prompts the intrinsic motivation in gaming. Now, a pellet of food may work well as a reward for a hungry rat until that hunger is satiated. And points can motivate a student who is not yet making the grade they desire until they are safely there. But some uniquely human desires are intrinsically motivated, and thus they are never satiated. Our highest achieving students are best motivated by these being achievement, mastery, and status. So I used a video game model to target these insatiable desires when I designed the virtual awards I bestow in my class. Okay, now this is really going to age me, but remember how video games before being digitalized were found everywhere at convenience stores? So neighborhood environments, right? And recall how the game always displayed the current top players and how this mastery list would constantly change because players were motivated to move their status up on the list and even more to regain a status spot on the list that they lost to someone else. Imagine if you were the king at the top of the list. Imagine someone else a week later dethroning you. Imagine how driven you would be to dethrone your opponent and regain your neighborhood status. This is the basic model that I used in designing virtual awards for my top students. So what do these highly effective virtual awards cost me? Not a penny. What do they look like? They are simply digital flyers I design that I send embedded in an email to the entire class after each exam, and they look like this. So a couple of things I want to point out here. One of them, notice I said embedded in an email. So I don't want them to have to click to find it. I want it right in front of them. Okay. Also notice that this is a FERPA-approved method because of the unique posting numbers. Okay. So if there are 7 perfect scores, I post them. If there are 5 perfect scores and 4 near perfect scores, then I post those 9 and so on. So I'm always shooting though for somewhere between 6 and 10 in my upper level classes because I want to keep the goal high and exclusive. And the unique posted numbers provide a FERPA FERPA-approved way to publicly bestow these awards. Most universities now acknowledge that student ID numbers are not really private. And so what they'll do is generally provide you with unique posting numbers for students, but often faculty are not aware of this or even know where to look for it. You can check with your instructional designers to see if your institution does provide these, or to propose the idea if they don't. Now let's look at winners' reactions. First, there is that dopamine award from discovering their name is on the list. So the first response is a dopamine rush. Oftentimes, students tell or message other student friends or two in the class that they made the list. You can often overhear this because it's often front row students doing this. And often they tell me before or after class, hey, Dr. Mae, I got a virtual award. Remember all the social sharing research? Sharing our disappointments helps to buffer them. But sharing our achievements and the pride that comes from it repeats and increases that dopamine rush. Also, I often hear something like this from students. I got a virtual award on the last exam, but not this one, and it's driving me crazy. I'm going to get the next one for sure. This is called loss aversion in psychology. It is more disturbing to lose something you had before than to never have had it in the first place. The amount of pleasure you obtain from winning a new iPad is outweighed by the amount of pain you experience when you lose it. So loss can be a powerful motivator. Students are highly motivated to get back on the list by studying more for the next exam. And when they do get back on the list, that dopamine rush is even further supersized by loss aversion, right? Finally, another loss aversion effect, I often hear this. I'm lower on the list than I was before, but I'm going to get back up there. In other words, students are competing not just with others' performance, but also with their own prior performance. Now, you may have noticed that I mentioned that I give out these awards in my upper level classes. I also use them in my intro classes. These are really large enrollment classes, but for a different purpose. Virtual awards can serve yet another function in introductory courses. They can affect perceived norms. Intro courses typically have a fairly sized subset of students who do not do well on the first test. It is tempting, easiest, and good for their ego for them to believe that this is because the class is too hard. The exams are unfair. This belief can cause them to give up at this point because fairness of the tests is not something in their control. So what I like to do with my upper level classes, okay, is I actually post all of the A's. So not just the perfect score or -1 on the tests, but all of the A's. When that subset of students who didn't do well see this many students getting top scores, it affects their perceived norms. They see that it is possible to do exceptionally well on the test if you put in the effort. Usually I need more rows of the table. So as you can see in this example, instead of shrinking the size of the cells and fonts, I emphasize this further by adding a second slide with a note that reads, wow, I had to resort to another chart just to get you all in. Very impressive. So the purpose of these mini webinars, again, is to throw these ideas out there, get our creative juices flowing, okay? Thinking outside the box. Does this inspire you to use virtual awards? For what else might you use them to reward students in your class? This concludes this mini webinar, but please jot down your comments and ideas in the Q&A, and we'll address these at the end of this mini series. Our final mini webinar in this series is titled DEIB on the instructor level. So let's begin with a quick definition of DEIB. Diversity refers to the range of human differences. And by the way, not just race, ethnicity, age, and gender, but also sexual orientation, social class, gender identity, physical, religious, and political differences, etc. Okay. Now, equity is having fair and impartial opportunities to excel. Inclusion happens when all students feel welcomed and supported and valued. And belonging is a sense of relatedness, feeling like you really are a part of the group. Note that equality does not take into account, like equity does, that students from underrepresented groups have very different starting points and oftentimes more obstacles along the way. We structure our classes to be a clear, fairly straight line goal, but with these traditional students in mind. So you can see this represented with this larger green sphere here, and the pretty much direct line to the goal, okay? However, our students from underrepresented groups, here represented by the blue smaller circles, experience different starting points and oftentimes, as shown here, many more obstacles along the way. Here's my favorite image showing how equality and equity differ. So you've probably seen maybe a version of this before. We want to build our classes with equity for all. So equality is holding all students to the same policies, for instance, like a due date. Equity is providing different exemptions as needed, just like you would clearly give a few more days for that student who's experiencing a death in their family. So again, the difference here is in the steps that are being provided to illustrate these special exemptions. I was DEIB before DEIB was cool. So I am pretty excited about this topic and the popularity it gained finally in 2020. The purpose of these mini webinars, again, is to get you thinking outside the box. In this case, hey, I'm going to begin with some of the more well-known ideas on how to give your teaching, your mentoring, your service a DEIB boost. But we will also explore some more unique ideas along the way. The most common and well-known DEIB step that you can take is to include a syllabus statement in your syllabi. Now, this is mine, but I am not likely to even leave it up long enough for you to read, because it is important that it is written in your own words. And now we can expand this. Add a door sign to your office door. Again, this is one I designed for my door 21 years ago, by the way, way back in 2001. But you will likely want to design your own. Do note that if you are naming particular groups, like this one does, it is really important to always include an etc., because there is no way we can identify all possible underrepresented groups. I also have posted a more general safe zone icon in my Canvas class homepages and by my office hours at that website. Now, this is my favorite DEIB technique of all, using anonymous polls simply to show and appreciate the diversity in my classes. Now, we use polls for many purposes in the classroom, but I love to do a half a dozen or so for this purpose only on the first day of classes. Regardless of the results, I and my students find them super interesting. Again, though, always remember to include an other answer option, right? Now, in Zoom, polling is built right in. In in-person classes, an iClicker or some other polling tool is required. So on the first day of class, my favorite are the three big ones: race, gender identity, and age. But I also poll on whether they work a job, and if so, how many hours, and the percent of tuition they pay themselves. Well, most of the students at my university don't work a job and don't pay any of their own tuition. There are always some, and it really helps those who do need to do this to know that they are not alone. Now, in the following weeks of class, after that first day, I like to insert another poll to this end, often, but not always, related to our lecture topic. So for instance, for developmental psych, I'll include this family structure poll. And for disorders, I will poll if they've ever experienced a disorder directly or secondhand through someone that they are close to. An awkward DEIB step in any discipline is dealing with the history of blah, blah, blah lecture. For a long time now, we have added prominent women in the history of psychology and acknowledged their roadblocks in class to explain to students why they don't as often hear of them. I further addressed this elephant in the room in a tongue-in-cheek manner by titling my history of psychology lecture as Old White Guys in Psychology. Another great DEIB strategy is to create an assignment that highlights privilege without even mentioning it. Okay, I don't want to have to mention privilege if I don't have to. And it's not just to avoid the backlash, but it's also because if students discover it on their own, it's far more meaningful to them than having it preached to them. So to create an assignment that highlights privilege without even mentioning it. Now, depending on the class and environment, this may be best offered as extra credit. And that is, in fact, what I do in my classes. I like to have students choose from two minority groups: wheelchair bound or homeless. So easy ones for them to envision, okay? And they don't bring up politics, okay? So also, they research and write a paper on a fictional student from this group and their believable speed bumps in registering for attending classes and doing homework for that particular class. And this, of course, can be done with any class. Then I like to really get them generalizing their thinking. So at the end, I have them choose another minority group, let them choose it, and end with just a bullet point list of 5 other credible obstacles for that group. We can also boost DEIB in our service by being a mouse in the room in committee meetings and then squeaking up. All right. In other words, bring up DEIB concerns either directly or indirectly when they are relevant. Let me give you an example. I've been a member of our scholarship committee for a number of years now. Early on, when learning that only honor students were considered for our highest award, but enrolling in our honors college was quite expensive, I simply brought up a question. How might we identify equally bright and qualified possible recipients of this award who cannot afford to be honor students? The ensuing discussion resulted in that criteria being removed. Here's a fun DEIB step that is particularly effective. Take a rudimentary sign language class. Now, if you do not have an inclusivity office to request this from, usually you can find a qualified guest speaker to offer one in your community. One thing you will want to specify in your request, though, that this not be the typical alphabet introduction, which is useless if you do not go on to use it daily. Instead, ask them to teach a few simple phrases that you can use with your hearing challenge students. Even if you just learn, welcome to my class, and I cannot sign, but we can write. It makes a big difference. And the beauty is, the worse you are, the better you connect with these students who are hearing challenged. So I am the opposite of fluent in sign language, but they can still tell what I'm trying to say, and my clumsiness really makes them laugh. But mostly, they so much appreciate anyone trying. They are so much more likely to actually come to my office hours or stay after class to communicate through writing after that kind of an intro. I've gotten to the point where I always begin every class, even if it's an online video, with welcome to my class. And if I do have any hearing challenge students, maybe a signer in my classroom for them, I will approach those students on the first day with my little, I cannot sign, but we can write, clumsy attempt. Okay. What happens is word spreads, even if you've never had a student in need of an interpreter at your institution, word spreads. So family members of students or potential students who are hearing challenged, when they hear something like this, see it, their ears perk up, right? And they help spread the news. One of the most exciting gifts I have ever been given is an introduction to diversity in my graduate school years. What I learned from my fellow grad students enriched my life in so many lasting ways. My friendships, my other relationships, my entertainment with a whole new appreciation of international and independent film, even my relationship with food through my love of so many ethnic foods, and my friends, so many new perspectives. It really is my desire to impart this gift to my undergrads in their contact and interactions with my staffs, plural, of undergrad assistants. Well, I began advertising my undergrad volunteer position openings in our honors college to attract the brightest. I soon learned to also advertise in our International Student Center newsletter to attract diverse students. Finally, I expanded this advertising even further to our entire population of majors and minors. In this way, I am also able to target the brightest of our lower income students, along with transfer students and first generation students. If any of your course content is in video format, the subtitles are likely not very helpful to any hearing challenged students in their current state. In other words, the subtitles likely rely on voice recognition, which, as you can see in the slide, can be highly flawed. Consider asking your tech folks to train you on working with subtitle files so that you can proof and edit them. Well, I do that for all of my short video clips that I play in all of my classes. I teach many online classes where my entire lectures are video authored. So I regularly select, train, and supervise a team of highly achieving undergraduate students to help with these. And I call these students my inclusivity assistants. If you are a four-year institute or a university professor, consider proposing an honors lecture for community colleges in your area to help attract transfer students. Many community colleges now have honors programs and select these lectures on a juried basis. And finally, were you part of an underrepresented group in your undergraduate tenure? Well, I totally acknowledge my white privilege. I did experience my undergraduate and graduate years from several minority perspectives besides gender. I was low income, a transfer student, and a first-gen student. I know the glass ceilings associated with these in a way you only can with firsthand knowledge. So while I offer mentorship to all my students on career exploration in the field, grad school, and other professional grad program preparation, I also offer this specialty been there mentoring to my low income, first gen, and transfer students through my classes and by registering with these specialties noted on my university's mentorship network. Finally, I also offer my students references for been there mentors from other underrepresented groups. So again, our goal here with these mini lectures is to get your creative juices flowing and prompt thinking outside the box. Hopefully you've been adding your comments and questions to Q&A, and I'm gonna turn this over now to our moderator who will help us tend with that now.
Yes, so we do have a few questions in here. So the first one is, what about offering bonus points as a bribe, which I believe was from your first mini presentation there.
Okay, was that extra credit points as a bribe? Is that what you said?
I believe so, yes, bonus points, extra credit points, I believe, yes.
Okay, well, you know, I'm really careful when I offer extra credit that all students have equal access. So I would only do that if you're offering in-person and Zoom office hours. And for a class of maybe 50 students or less, that's awesome. But I have to tell you, for my size classes of 300, I would not want to do that bookwork of hand entering all of that. But it's a great idea for smaller classes, and many of those listening do have smaller classes here today. So love it.
Absolutely. So the next question is, what about those students who will never be on the list, which I believe is from your second mini webinar there.
Yep.
Um,
Virtual awards. Okay. Yep. So yes, our high achieving students are going to pay attention to those, and they're always going to be watching for themselves and see where they moved, if they did, within the list or off it. But there are many other things that we already do, many others, much more, for our struggling students, the ones who would never make that list. So we have study tutoring that we offer, my staff and I, during our Monday through Friday, many office hours. We've got study guides, we have note outlines, so if they're not really good at taking notes, they can actually follow note outlines and just fill them in as they go. We have extra credit that we can advise them on, opportunities where, you know, if they didn't master that particular exam because they have other ways of showing that they really mastered something, they have those possibilities too. So excellent, you know, we don't want to forget those students, and by no means has this ever come close to that. Quite the opposite. The ones we tend to forget are the ones that are doing great. And this is such a quick and easy and free way, even if you have 300 students in your classroom, to give a little boost to those high achievers.
Next question is, what website do you use to create the students' unique codes when displaying virtual awards?
Okay, so this is something that you're going to want to talk to your instructional designer if you don't see them on your course rosters. So the first place I would look at, what most universities are doing this now, and they're usually in the course roster once your class begins. If you don't see a column and don't see those unique posting numbers, you can contact your administration, or if you have instructional designers, and ask them if they're somewhere else, or, you know, to instigate it if they are not doing it yet. It is definitely not FERPA approved. You can't post publicly using the student numbers or their names, of course. Good question. Yes.
And the last question we have is, can you remind everyone again what DEIB stands for?
Absolutely. I'll even pull that slide up for you. DEIB, here we go. So the D stands for diversity, you might recall, and the E stands for equity. The I stands for inclusion, the B is belonging. And again, when we say diversity, not just what we call in social psychology, they're called the big three: race, ethnicity, age, and gender. You know, you might think of them as like the big 3 or 4, because they're usually visual, right? But also all those ones that aren't necessarily visual, but are so important that I listed before. And of course, to always include that ETC or other, right? And then equity, again, is having fair, impartial opportunities to excel in the class. Inclusion happens when all students feel welcomed, supported, and valued. And belonging is a sense of relatedness, like they really are feeling part of a group. My hearing challenged students who needed signers in the classroom never interacted with the other students until I started doing very rudimentary signing in class, and even teaching the class just a couple of things on the first day, just to acknowledge that, hey, you know, it's cool having them here. Why else would we get a chance to learn this, you know?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all the valuable information that you provided with us today, Dr. Mae. It was really intriguing. I really enjoyed my time listening. But we are out of time. So unfortunately, we do have to end the presentation here. But our next concurrent session will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And I have gone ahead and I have sent all of our links in the chat for session meeting rooms and access to the conference website for a complete list of the concurrent sessions and their descriptions. And while accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team. There you can view a quick 5-minute demonstration and be entered to win the hourly giveaway, your choice of the 6 month subscription to Audible, a 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card, which are all really exciting prizes. So hopefully we'll see you there. And with that, we will see you at your next session. And thank you again so much for joining us here with Dr. Mae. We really appreciate your time and all of the wonderful things you had to say.
My pleasure. Thank you, Daisy.
Bye. Of course. Thank you, everyone. We will be back here in about 10 minutes for our next session if you'll be joining us. And with that, everyone have a great